I was 9 years old the first year I went to church camp. And I remember sitting under an old tree one morning during devotion, reading my Bible, and I remember looking up and scanning the sun-drenched campground and seeing other kids scattered around reading and praying as well. I thought about how, for the first time in my life, I had actually listened to the sermons preached and sang the songs that were being sung. I also reflected on the laughter and games we had played that week and thought, this must be what heaven will be like. Now, I have always loved everything about camp, from standing in line to go eat, to living in the dorms, to the games and the fun and the vespers and the Bible study and singing. To this day, when I think about camp, I still envision it as a little bit of what heaven will be like. Now, of course, I do have some more conditions now that I'm older. I don't want it to be too hot or too cold there, and I don't want it to be too rainy or too dry. I can do without bug bites and the poison ivy, and air conditioning might be nice too. Furthermore, I hope heaven will have more comfortable beds without the noise from all the other campers, and that there'll be an opportunity to sleep in a little more without a bell waking me up at 7 in the morning. You know, my love of camp has always prevented me from understanding why any camper would get homesick and beg to go home. When I was serving on faculty and as the dean of a camp, I used to try to reason with those sobbing kids, saying basically, without saying so many words, but saying basically, this is like heaven. You don't want to leave here. But to them, it wasn't like heaven. It was more like hell to them. So I finally realized that. So when they would come to me that way as campers, I would just let them call home. And thinking about that, maybe my equating church camp with heaven is not the best or most universal illustration I can give to describe heaven. When Jesus tried to explain spiritual things to us, he used common, everyday things which we call parables. A parable can be defined as an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And Jesus used a lot of them to describe what the kingdom of heaven is like, to give us kind of a complete picture, because he knew that all the illustrations might not make sense to the person hearing, and it may not be that way for the person hearing it, like an illustration of church camp being like heaven. For some it is, for some it's not. Now maybe we won't understand how the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, but maybe we can understand how it's like a net. Matthew 13, verses 34 and 35 says, Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. So was fulfilled what was spoken to the prophets. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. Matthew includes 7 parables in chapters 13 of his gospel. We looked at the first one, the parable of the sower, last Sunday. Today, we're going to look at the rest of the parables Jesus told in this chapter. And all 6 of these remaining parables answer the same question. What is the kingdom of heaven like? So what is the kingdom of heaven like? The kingdom of heaven, Jesus said, is like weeds. Like weeds. That seems kind of strange, doesn't it? Like the first parable in Matthew chapter 13, Jesus has to explain what this second parable is all about. Apparently, the idea Jesus is trying to teach is so unique, or maybe just so different, even his disciples cannot grasp what it is he's trying to say. We have an advantage today because we have Jesus' explanation of this parable. Follow along as I read the parable of the weeds in verses 24, beginning in verse 24. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servant came to him and said, Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from? An enemy did this, he replied. The servants asked him, Do you want us to go and pull them up? No, he answered, because while you are pulling the weeds, you may root up the wheat with them. Let them both grow together until the harvest. At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it to my barn. Now skip down as I read Jesus' explanation of this parable beginning in verse 36. Then he left the crowd and went to the house. His disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He answered, "The one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear." You know, for centuries, the church, even though Jesus explained this parable, has not always understood what it meant. Because for centuries, the church has tried to pull out the weeds. Everything from monasteries to Christian schools to making Christianity the state religion to legislating morality and having separate Christian songs, TVs, movies, and other products. Those are all attempts to rid the kingdom of heaven of bad influences and non-Christian teaching. Now, although the sentiment behind most of those things are good, it misses the point of the kingdom of heaven. Often, it's hard to tell the difference early in the growing season between what's the crop and what's just a weed. It's interesting that Jesus says, "Don't pull them out until the harvest," or in other words, final judgment. This scene is very much like the scene of judgment described in Revelation chapter 14, where God tells the angel to take his sickle and harvest the world. On the surface, this parable seems to break down early. We talked last week about how sometimes parables break down if you try to examine them too closely. And it seems almost this parable breaks down pretty quick. Because a farmer will usually spend a lot of time and effort keeping the weeds out of his field. He won't wait until the harvest because the weeds will keep his crop from reaching its full potential. Now, I don't know if there are some weeds that are so much like a crop that you shouldn't pull them out, because if you do, you risk destroying some of the crop. Now, those of you who farm or garden would know better than I, like I told you last Sunday, I'm not much of a gardener or a farmer at all. However, if a weed looks like a crop or not, really doesn't matter. It's not the point. That misses the point of what Jesus is trying to teach us here. The point is, it's not our job to pull the weeds out. It's not our job to pull the weeds out. God will separate at the harvest. Our job is to grow and produce good seed. That's what we should be focusing on. What a difference it would make. Instead of being known for what we are against or the weeds that we pull, we were known for the good produced in our lives. What is the kingdom of heaven like? The kingdom of heaven is like mustard seed and yeast. Now, parables don't have to be complete stories. 4 of the parables Jesus tells in Matthew chapter 13 are shorter thoughts or descriptions of something rather than a narrative. Note the first 2 in verses 31 through 33. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all your seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree. So that the birds of the air come and perch in its branches. He told them still another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into a large amount of flour until it worked all through the dough. Now, both of these parables are talking about how the kingdom of heaven grows. An important truth we should not miss is that the kingdom will grow. A church or a person or a group not growing is like flour without yeast, or a mustard seed not planted. It hasn't reached its full potential. Most importantly, what we see in this parable is how the kingdom of heaven permeates everything. Sometimes we think we're only just a small church here, that we really can't do much because we are so small in number. However, do not underestimate the size of the outreach and the size of Sterling Park Christian Church. Over the years, many people have entered this building and they've heard the gospel message proclaimed. Many have been baptized here, or trained here, or just matured in their faith a little bit here. And they've gone on to do great things for the kingdom. That's the nature of our community. You know that people don't stay here forever. They come for a few years and then move on. And that's reflected in the church over the years. Do not underestimate the work that's now today being done around the world because of our giving to missions. Don't underestimate that. We have an impact far beyond anything we can even imagine. My all-time favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life. And the premise of that movie is, how would the world be different if you had never been born? Remember the story? George Bailey thought he was a loser. He never got the chance to leave his small town of Bedford Falls or go on any exciting adventures. He lived in a drafty old house, and his children took all his attention and all his money. One Christmas Eve, an important deposit from his savings and loan turns up missing, and the auditor issues a warrant for his arrest. George feels like he has failed, and everyone would be better off if he had never been born. You know the story, right? His guardian angel showed up and showed him how bad everything would be without him there. And he realizes it really is a wonderful life. What would Sterling be? What would Sterling be like if Sterling Park Christian Church never existed? Our presence here has been a light shining in darkness. It has been salt for a bland world. And we have offered hope to those who need it. Now, without a doubt, we're not the biggest church in town. And maybe there are things going on in our community, well, not maybe, there are things going on in our community that rub us the wrong way. And maybe sometimes it feels as if Christian morals and values have been abandoned and no one's interested in the things of the church anymore. But know for sure, things would be a lot worse, and this town a lot poorer, if it were not for the yeast we spread throughout this community every day. What's the kingdom of heaven like? The kingdom of heaven is like hidden treasure and pearls. Beginning of verse 44. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in the field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. It was Will Rogers who once said, America is the only country in the world where a person drives himself to the poorhouse in his new car. We have such a pearl of great price here in the church that often we do not even realize it. And that's especially true if you grew up in church, or if you have been here a long time. We get used to it. We become just kind of fall into a trance almost. We don't realize the pearl we have here. We don't realize what a treasure we have with the gospel. Instead, what do? We gripe about silly things, like the style of worship or the color of the carpet. At one church I served, we worked very hard one year to set up a quality vacation Bible school program. For years, the VBS there had only run 20 or 30 kids, but that year we had almost 100 children show up every single night. However, instead of being excited, several workers told me on the last day if we were going to have that many kids, they would not work VBS again. And during the week, when they ran out of cookies or supplies because we weren't expecting that many people, instead of going out and getting more, they told the unlucky children, there's no more. Their attitude was, we aren't responsible to feed you, and if you did not pre-register, we're not going to bother to get a new book for you. We know what happened, right? The next year, VBS was back down to 20 or 30 kids, and remained that way. We have a pearl of great price, a hidden treasure, but instead of doing whatever it takes to get the treasure, we often don't even try. Years ago, I took my family to Denver for the North American Christian Convention. And as we started on our journey home, we decided to drive up the Rocky Mountains. I had been there as a child, and I wanted to share that with my family. At the entrance to the national park, this is the first time I've been to a national park in years and years, I was stopped. And they were going to charge a couple dollars to ride up the mountain. They do that all the time now at national parks, but that was new to me back then. Well, this was, like I said, this is the first time I encountered this fee, and I was offended. After all, it's a national park, and I was a tax-paying citizen. Why should I pay to go over the mountain? Well, like I said, since I've been there before, I turned around the parking lot, and I was going to leave, until I looked over at my wife, and I could tell she was upset. And I asked her what was wrong, and she said, we will probably never have the chance to come here again, and you're going to let a few dollars stand in the way of us seeing the Rocky Mountains. Well, properly chastised, I turned back around, paid the admission price, and we were able to see snow on the ground in July. The question is, does the gospel worth anything to you? Is it worth getting up on Sunday morning? Is it worth putting some money in the offering? Is it worth getting involved and spending time in various programs and activities of the church? It doesn't matter what we say Christianity means to us. What matters is how much are you willing to spend for it. I've shared before about my daughter Candy and all the mental and emotional issues she has. She spent most of her teenage years in and out of hospitals for treatment, and that's not cheap. There was a point early on when our insurance coverage ran out, and I don't know how many times I would take her to the hospital when she got out of control, and the hospital would of course admit her, but a couple of days later they dismissed her because there was no insurance coverage. However, I kept seeking treatment for her, and the last thing I was concerned about was the cost. The result was a pile of debt that only within the last few years have I been able to erase. However, if I had to do it all over again, I would still seek treatment for her, even if it meant going into debt again. When we find the truth, when we find the answer to life's questions, will we walk away because we don't want to pay the price? Or will we sell all we own in order to have it? Is the kingdom of heaven worth it to you? Well, finally, what is the kingdom of heaven like? The kingdom of heaven is like a net. Beginning at verse 47. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down to the lake and caught all kinds of fish. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angel would come and separate the wicked from the righteous, and throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all these things? Jesus asked. Yes, they replied. He said to them, therefore, every teacher of the law who has been instructed about the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. In many ways, this parable, the parable of the nets, is similar to the first parable we looked at today, the parable of the weeds. The same idea about separating at the final, separating people. They're both talking about judgment. They're both talking about how, at the end of all things, the angels will separate the good from the bad. However, in this parable, Jesus gives us a little different application. Usually the application that we use in this parable, however, is the wrong application. We use this parable often as a scare tactic. We emphasize the weeping and gnashing of teeth. We vividly illustrate hell to warn others to stay away. So in other words, we're looking for a negative response instead of a positive response. We want to be saved to avoid hell, is the basic thing we're saying, instead of seeking God out of our love for Him. Years ago I saw a cartoon I loved. The preacher is getting ready to preach a sermon on hell, but before he goes to the pulpit, he cranks the thermostat up to make it very hot in the building. Without a doubt, we want to avoid hell. However, the teaching on hell in the Bible is not meant to scare unbelievers. It's meant to motivate Christians. Think about that. There's a big difference. Verse 52 is very hard to understand. There are many interpretations as to what it means, and these interpretations often go off on tangents, defining who the teachers are and what the old and new treasure means. So rather than going into a lot of detail here, let's look at this verse in context of the parables Jesus had already been teaching. He's been describing what the kingdom of heaven will be like. And he has drawn a contrast between what is good and what is bad. Now, there's an action we take as members of the kingdom of God. That's what this parable is about, the action we take. Jesus has described it as sowing a crop, growing mustard seeds, and yeast that permeates. He has also described very valuable teachings worth everything we have to obtain. So, when Jesus talks here about weeping and gnashing or being cast into hell, he's not trying to scare unbelievers. He's trying to motivate those of us who do believe. In other words, whatever it takes, do it to let others know. We don't want our family and friends to suffer, do we? By saying the owner of the house brings out his store of new and old treasure, Jesus seems, at least to me, to be saying, use everything you have to reach others. For the last several weeks, we've been talking about our one. It's been in the bulletin every Sunday. Who is one person that you know that needs to know Jesus? Family member, friend, neighbor, enemy, doesn't matter. Who do you know needs to know Jesus? And the encouragement we're giving is to invite them to come. Invite them to be a part. Invite them to see who is your one. Do you care about them at all? Is it worth the effort? Is it worth the cost to have what you have? You know, we have, every Sunday morning we sing old hymns and new choruses. When we do that, Judy puts those together that way to inspire and reach as many people as possible. We have the old story wrapped up in modern technology. Can you imagine when the church's one foundation was written, that the writer would ever think that it would be put up on a screen for everybody to see and sing it that way? That would be so far out of what you could comprehend. An old story wrapped in modern technology, like sound systems and the PowerPoint. Just as Jesus used a variety of parables to reach a varied audience, so we must use a variety of methods to reach our varied audience. Who is your one? Is it worth it? Do you want them to see the kingdom?